This is the Dzogchen Sendai Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. Come, let us explore. Want boundless wisdom? Do not force your meditation. Followed by meditate like a Jedi. This evening's lesson is based on the 5th verse of Dorje Sempa Namka Che, composed oh so many centuries ago by the great Buddhist reformer Garab Dorje. So my intention is to first read the passage, second, explain the passage, and third, repeat the passage one more time. Kind of like a sandwich. Supreme wisdom is difficult to realize, except by the way of our wisdom of letting go itself. And I think this should be a small e. Dependence on others to acquire true wisdom is merely a fantasy, since blissful wisdom actually arises naturally from within. One moment, if you please. Well, let's keep it that way. So, let's go back to the outline. Life is messy. It can change glacially. It can change as slowly as a glacier, or as rapidly as a lightning. It requires nimbleness, does it not? There is no way we can plan for everything. So we have to be able to optimize the efficiency of all the components comprising our central nervous system. So how do we do that? Well, that is not acquired from contrived analysis. nor is it acquired from relying on people of flesh, blood, and bone who could be foolish or greedy or frightened. So what I'd like to do is share some visual aids with you. Let us explore the scientific basis of both spiritual matriarchy as well as religious patriarchy. There is archaeological evidence that from about 300,000 years ago, give or take, to about 290,000 years ago, our Paleolithic ancestors lived with a point of view that was flexible, loving, rational, laid back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind, which is fabulous. Kind of reminds me of, so let me move forward. After however, about 10,000 years ago, give or take, the Neolithic Revolution saw the advent of proto-capitalism, where human society did a 180 and began training us to be rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel. And so, in other words, we went from being like groovy Qui-Gon Jinn to grumpy Mace Windu. The majority of people, religious or not, spiritual or not, even those who practice meditation, 90% of the people out there are stuck, are so rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel that they think it's the ideal way to be. And when they give us advice, it'll be from that world view. And though the majority of them might mean well, might be sincere, it's still destructive advice. Now let's look at this. So we've looked at this through the lens of archaeology and anthropology. Now let us look at this through the lens of neuroscience. When we indulge our controlling and rigid tendencies to actively focus and actively analyze and actively compete against our own autonomic nervous system, we can wind up exhausting our dorsolateral, medial, prefrontal cortex to the point that we not only begin presenting with some symptoms of depression, but we also wind up triggering our amygdala, the seat of both anxiety and aggression. What happens when we do the opposite? What happens when we passively cooperate with both facets of our autonomic nervous system? When we do that, our amygdala is calmed. The anxiety and aggression of our amygdala is calmed. And the empathy of our anterior cingulate gyrus is gently stimulated, which is just fabulous. So I mentioned offhand that our autonomic nervous system has two facets. We'll begin with the first. When it comes to mindfulness, every time we inhale, we automatically access the middle bit of our spinal cord, which functions as the nexus of our sympathetic nervous system, which has evolved to help us to vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly notice all mind's antics of perception, emotion, intention, cognition, recollection, and imagination, be they external or internal or physical or mental or pleasurable or painful or interesting or boring or glorious or grotesque. What is the key to sustainably and efficiently watching the antics of mind? It's simply a matter of silently and mentally reciting the verb watch. Every time we feel our lungs swell, every time we feel our chest swell with breath. But what do we do with all that stuff that we noticed? That brings us to meditation. Every time we exhale, whether we know it or not, whether we mean to or not, we are already wired to automatically access both the very attic as well as the very basement of that same spinal cord. These two regions together as a team could be described as the nexus of our parasympathetic nervous system, which has evolved to help us to relax to such a degree that which we noticed during our previous inhalation could fleetingly feel less stressful, less permanent, less defining, and even as non-graspable as a vast empty void. Now, when I was in 4th grade, the teacher explained that a simile is only as effective as it is relatable. So what is a real-world example of a non-graspable vast empty void? How about the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which although could look tantalizing to the eye, could feel non-graspable to the hand? And so there you have it. Whether we're dealing with emptiness or no self, or birthlessness, or deathlessness, or changelessness, these are just metaphors to describe the fleeting experience of non-graspability latent within each exhalation. What is the key to most efficiently resting in mind's non-graspable aspect? Simple. All we gotta do is silently and mentally recite the verb rest each time we feel our chest subtly sink as gently we exhale. But what about wisdom? Simply by passively cooperating with our autonomic nervous system in this manner, our choices and utterances and deeds begin to flow, not from calculated contrivance, not from wild scatterness, but instead from love's deeply centered spontaneity. It is this deeply centered spontaneity that is the key to the efficient and sustainable use of the entirety of our central nervous system. Not using it actively, but passively. Not using it in a contrived manner, but not using it in a scattered manner, but using all the facets of our central nervous system in a deeply centered and spontaneous manner. This is the key to the wisdom that we need. I don't know about you. I'm a big sci-fi geek. And so when I was a kid, back in the 80s, I saw all three versions of RoboCop. And in the first version of RoboCop, the first movie, he had three prime directives. And he was able to go through them pretty quick. During the second one, he had hundreds and he became paralyzed. And he couldn't, it was by trying to use his rational mind to sort through all his directives became overwhelming. Just as there was a limit to RoboCop's ability to consciously sort through all the variables, similarly, you and I have the same problem. That is why it's most efficient for us to use our autonomic nervous system as the North Star, the guiding light by which we can use the remainder of our central nervous system in a profoundly sustainable manner. Doing this is known by many names. Some call it right effort. Some people call it effortless effort. Some people call it doing without doing. Some people call it wu wei. Some people call it expedient means. Some people call it being in the zone. The most efficient way to live our life in the zone is to set aside a few minutes, at least once every 12 hours or so, to watch and rest in harmony with our respective inhalations and exhalations. We can do this while walking, we can do this while sitting, we can do this while lying down, we can even do this while making love. I would like to tie this lesson in the proverbial red bow by returning to this evening's root text. Supreme wisdom is difficult to realize, except by the way of our wisdom of letting go itself. Dependence on others to acquire true wisdom is merely a fantasy, since blissful wisdom actually arises naturally from within. You have taken your first step into a much larger world. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. Meditate like a Jedi is made possible thanks to the generosity of viewers just like you. For the remainder of this evening's live stream, let's practice together as a team. The free fall that is meditation could feel jarring to both our rigid and controlling tendencies. A useful workaround is to play with a variation, the following variation of Bengali crease counting. Let us touch the tip of our left thumb to the lower set of creases on its left little finger, thus keeping track of our first set of 16 inhalations. Now let us rest this left hand palms up in our lap. Every time we silently and mentally recite the verb watch as we inhale, we could advance our right thumb up the creases and tips of each of its fingers, beginning with our right little finger. Clearly, I've run out of places to count with my right thumb. Therefore, I return to my left thumb and advance it. And now you get the basic idea of how we can count 16 sets of 16 inhalations each. It takes a little bit more than 1 minute to count 16 inhalations on our right hand. It takes a little bit more than 20 minutes to count 16 sets of 16 inhalations each on our left hand. While gathering our first collection of 20 or so minutes, we could rest the first knuckle, the lower knuckle of our right middle finger upon the tip of our left middle finger, palms up in our lap. While gathering our second collection of 20 or so minutes, we could rest the second knuckle, the middle knuckle of our right middle finger upon the tip of our left middle finger, palms up in our lap. While beginning to gather our second collection of 20 or so minutes, while beginning to gather our third collection of 20 or so minutes, we could keep track of this affair by resting the third knuckle, the higher knuckle of our right middle finger upon the tip of our left middle finger, palms up in our lap, all the while counting 16 sets of 16 inhalations each. Overwhelmed? The antidote is repetition. Practice with me once every 12 hours or so, and within a week or two, the Buddha's path you could master. Many elitists insist that we must assume the full lotus position. However, number one, the Buddha never taught that. Number two, the most ancient Buddhist statuary does not depict the full lotus position, but rather the quarter lotus position, where our legs are not crossed, our shins are not crossed, but just stacked, like, Oreo cookies. The key to sitting is to find a position, or two positions, that we can shift between every 15 or 20 minutes or so, that enable us or empower us to sit somewhat tall during each inhalation. The moment you have a specific question about the philosophies or techniques of Taoism, Buddhism, Tantra, Dzogchen, Zen, or Mahamudra, do not hesitate to type your question in great detail in the chat window, for I tend to check for questions about every 5 minutes or so. If you just tuned in, welcome aboard. The most efficient way for us to practice, for us to watch the antics of mind or practice mindfulness, is to simply silently and mentally recite the verb watch each time we feel our lungs swell with breath. Similarly, the most efficient way for us to practice meditation, the most efficient way for us to rest in mind's non-graspable aspect is for us to silently and mentally recite the verb rest each time we feel our chest subtly sink as gently we exhale. The moment you have a specific question about the philosophies or techniques of Taoism, Buddhism, Tantra, Dzogchen, Zen, or Mahamudra, do not hesitate to type your question in great detail in the chat window, for I tend to check for questions about once every 5 minutes or so. In about 11 hours, I would very much like to return to lead tomorrow's first lesson, followed by meditating like a Jedi. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.